News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
Welcome to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning.
I'm Allan Gilbreth of darkhookmedia.com.
And I'm Maximilian with a very happy, belated, but still all the more relevant Kid Inventors Day.
That's what we need in this world. We need kids making things. Get off your phone, get
Like
off
Lego
the TV
sets.
and start building stuff. So,
It's all because today's also that day was also the birthday of Benjamin Franklin.
well, talk about an inventor. But I think the person that invented Braille was 15 years old.
Louis Braille. I actually have a daily deviation coming up about him, so no spoilers.
Okay, no spoilers. Anyway, well, if you want to get involved in the conversation, it's a good day to do it. If you're a kid inventor out there, tell us what you're making. And, make sure you patent it first. Don't let anybody steal your ideas.
And there is no age limit to patents.
Exactly. Get in touch with us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline. You can call or text us at 901-683-0989. Let us know what you're up to, and let's talk. Also, you can send pictures there, I should mention. Well, if you go to @Tool Talk Radio on Facebook, you will see 3 posts that we've made. One is our great moments in building history, which you guys, we're about to get hit with some cold winter weather. Winter's about to get real over here in the Mid-South. So let's turn our attention to warm weather activities, and let's talk about the world's tallest sandcastle. What the heck? Although it's in
Denmark.
It's in Denmark.
Yeah. All right, we can cover.
I don't know how warm the weather's going to be, but anyway, so we're going to talk about that, and it's pretty big. It's bigger than somebody might think, but actually, there's a lot of engineering lessons to be learned in building a sandcastle. So this playtime is over. This is serious. This is a serious.
They got serious
construction. So Allan's week in review could be its own show this week. It sounded like, okay, you went from doing like 2 things to now that the holidays are over, you're getting caught up. There's I got like 5 things listed here. I'm not even going to get to it. We just strap in for that, folks. That's going to be its own segment. Let's see. This is interesting, Allan. This week I installed something I've never done in 30-something years of carpentry. I put in my first ever Dutch door.
Oh!
If you don't know what a Dutch door is, folks, do you know if you've ever looked at Winnie the Pooh's house or Mr. Ed's house? And there's that door that divides in half.
Yep, it's 2 doors in one. You can move the top and bottom independent of each other.
Yes, and as usual, I make one innocent comment to Allan, and he's got about 8 million bits of information about it. The Dutch door has its own rich history.
Oh, so yes.
Why not dive into that? But it also has its own challenges when hanging those things. So we'll talk about that as well. Let's see. We got more. I do have a suggested viewing, and I think it's going to be interesting, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but at some point in the show, I'm going to sprinkle that in, and it's going to be something right after Allan's own heart. So we've got a lot. It's going to be a full day of Tool Talk Radio, so hang in there, folks. But before we get to any of those things, let's start with our must-have item of the week, which I've posted. I've got everything posted on time today. So, but I guess tell people what I'm holding up.
You are holding up, and if I can squint just well enough, it says clear. So you are holding up a wonderful pressure tube of clear caulk.
Okay. Why do you call it a pressure tube? I never heard of that. It's just a tube of latex caulk.
Well, you have to express it with a caulk gun.
Okay.
So that is a pressurized tube. If you'll notice in the bottom, it has a pressure plate, which is where everything has to line up and push evenly.
No, I get it. I just never. Okay, because it's the difference between one.
It's not a squeeze tube.
It's not like a tube of toothpaste.
It's not a squeeze tube. That's right.
Well, the reason is, there's a few features about this. You're like, wow, whoop-de-doo, caulk. Who cares?
No.
This is 40-year, and it's latex caulk.
Yes.
And it's clear, and clear caulk has its own features. And this is one of these things where I think every homeowner needs to just keep a tube of clear caulk on hand. Do you have something, Max?
Forgive me if this is a bit of a digression, but Allan, you would know this. I'm assuming you do. What back in the day? Because where would our world be without caulk? But where was our world before caulk?
Oh, it was horrifyingly in the tar, asphalt, and greased rag department.
I know exactly where it was because on this job I was at, they didn't have caulk. Remember I told you I was taking off some door trim, and this is a home that was built in 1929. And yeah, they used tar, Max, and it was hard to get out, man. It was I had to take it out with a hammer and a chisel.
Awful.
Yeah. But getting back to the must-have item,
well, that's not flammable. Let's start right there.
Well, the reason I like, okay, so folks, if you've ever used latex clear caulk, immediately what you're going to notice is it's much thinner. Now, you're not going to use this on a giant gap. You know what I mean? This is not meant for that. This is sort of, I like it because it's a very discreet repair, you could say.
Yes.
Like if you want to put something, maybe you're caulking something. And maybe, okay, perfect example. You're caulking a little gap at the bottom of a baseboard, and you don't want to repaint that whole section of wall.
Right.
So what you do is you take some latex caulk, and if you're real careful, you just take some of that trim color paint, and when it dries, you just paint over it. And that little bit of overlap, you're not going to even see it. It's kind of transparent, and it is thinner, which makes it easier to wipe off. It's I wouldn't say it's as I don't know, it's not as hardy, I guess, as regular caulk, but I got a question for you, Alan, because it's okay, clear caulk and like white caulk or one of those tinted caulks are much thicker. Is it just because of the pigment in there or something?
Oh no.
Why is it thicker? Because I've always wondered that, and you're the person to ask. But.
Well, most of those are also adhesive caulks.
Okay, talk to me.
So, like, I'm thinking about half of the aisle at the big box store is basically a thick glue.
Okay.
So you start it like your Elmer's white glue,
right?
And that is a thin white glue, but it runs. So that's why we don't use that particular brand as a caulk because it's a little too thin. But then you start thickening it up, and you get to my favorite in the whole world, which is the antimicrobial, antifungal bath and shower white caulk, because that is pretty much the standard product I use.
Okay.
It's thicker, it's heavier, it's also an adhesive. So if I'm working on a bathroom and there's just a tile that's a little bit loose, I can ease it out, rub it with a little caulk, ease it back in, and that baby is now sealed up and back in there forever.
Okay.
The clear caulk, however, I got to tell you, the word discreet is exactly right, because when I was building a house last year, we were framing everything in, and then everybody, if you haven't built a house or seen how a house is built, a modern house, like in the last 10 years, there is a lot of strapping, a lot of hurricane braces, and a lot of little weird things that you really have to kind of in your mind debate whether or not they work. Seriously.
Like overkill, you mean?
Well, it's just a little thin metal strap. Well, I got news for you. That little thin metal strap can keep your roof from blowing off in a hurricane.
Yeah, those hurricane straps, when you put, because think of it, you're putting a little metal reinforcement on every single rafter.
Exactly.
That adds up
now,
in the big scheme of things.
Exactly. Now, with that same thought, we live in the Mid-South, and we have a variety of critters that live on the outside that might want to come inside and live with you. And when you are framing out, occasionally you accidentally make what I like to call a bug run.
Yeah, they don't need much room.
They don't need
that
much
one
room.
Little gap.
That little 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch gap that you left back behind something.
There you go.
I drove the crew crazy for about half a day, going around the entire eaves of this building and hitting every little thin crack I could hit. Not to mess up the airflow, because you need airflow to keep your house dry for mildewing, but I was putting it down where right between the framing and the sheetrock was going to be this little gap that had been perfect for cockroaches or whatever.
Right. I will say, it's funny you're saying that, because when I think of it, I think of like you talked about draft. This is a quick cheat kind of a little thing. Like, for example, perfect example, we have a home with older windows, and occasionally you'll, in my son's room, there was a window, and 3 or 4 of the panes had a little bit of give to them, and there was a lot of draft that can get through there. Well, if you're just trying to do the quickie thing, grab yourself some of this clear caulk, cut the tip really thin, and just fill that gap in with the clear caulk. And if you wipe it off, you're not even going to see it against the glass. You're not going to see it against the whatever, and you just eliminated those drafts. And it's a very quick, easy. It's one of those. I guess it's one of those things to keep on hand when you don't want to make a bigger issue out of things. You just need to fix it quickly and be done with it. So,
all right, well, Joe,
and it's cheap. It's like $4. So.
I'm going to give you mad props on the window because you would be. Everybody goes, oh, well, that's not going to make any difference. You will be shocked.
Oh, it makes a huge difference.
How much difference a 30-second little patch job like that can make to your electricity bill.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of eliminating drafts because it makes – I've seen it in my own house. I mean, you like you said, you fill in that one little thing. You take care of that weather stripping around the door, and suddenly you're like, wow, it's really comfortable in here.
Yeah, it is.
And especially with the weather we've got coming up this week. I think we're going to finally be in the teens around here, right?
We're easing down.
Well, you guys, I had a first ever experience this week, and I'm gonna share it with you. I installed my first ever Dutch door, and we're going to talk about the installation and also maybe a little bit about the history of this door. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
I thought I told you. I do the cutting around here.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And we definitely invite you to go over to Facebook and go to @ToolTalkRadio and check out the posts we've made over there. You guys, I had a first ever experience. If you're just tuning in, folks, I installed my first ever Dutch door. Now, let's lay this out. What is a Dutch door? I mean, if you've seen this show, I guess it was a show, Mr. Ed, the horse.
Yeah, it was
what was that, like 70 years ago? It's
one of my favorite shows.
Really?
I really
You watched that show, Max? You're young for that show.
I like on the a MeTV, those sorts of channels. I liked the horse. He was pretty sassy.
Oh yeah, he was a wise guy. He was a good
Wilbur.
Yeah,
he gave Wilbur a lot of grief.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mr. Ed or Winnie the Pooh. I'm sure there's other famous Dutch doors, but it's the whole thing of the bottom. The bottom and the top open independently from each other. You have two doors that divide in half. So I have to wonder how many accidents there have been with the Dutch door. I can just picture somebody accidentally swinging closed the top door. Somebody's looking down at their phone while they're walking in, or some kid is 3 foot something tall and waxes top of his head. I don't know. But.
No, Joe, the Three Stooges never did an entire episode of killing themselves on a Dutch door. No, the Three Stooges never did that, Joe.
Well, it's funny because now it's a really cool door, and I have to say this is one of the finishing touches on this project I've been working on for months and months. We're finally reaching the end of this thing, but it's a laundry room and a 2-car carport that I built in Midtown for a home that was really it's like almost 100 years old. It was built in 1929. Mm-hmm. Well, they have so in this laundry room, which is really, I mean, this is almost this. If this is my house, this would have been like my office or the man cave or something. It's such a cool room,
Okay.
But whatever. It's a laundry room. This laundry room is outfitted with a really nice dog door. They have 2 dogs that are very high-spirited, let's just say. And so the idea was that they want the dogs to be able to come and go as they'd like, but they don't want them coming and going and then running through the whole house while they're gone at work, and who knows what they're going to track in and whatever. So part of the idea here is they want this laundry room to be a place where they could keep the dogs. And so the idea of a Dutch door was partially they could keep the dogs in there. They still feel connected to the home, but more importantly, the airflow will move because next to this room, there's a pantry, there's a hallway, and it's not very well. There's no vent in this whatever. They need airflow. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
So anyway, this Dutch door is not what I would say. This isn't the high-end Dutch door. This is the $220 Dutch door.
It's still a Dutch door. It's still a Dutch door. It's awesome.
It's got 4 windows on the top, which give you a lot of visibility, and then the bottom is frame. It's like slatted, like the tongue and groove slats. So I think this door is great on the inside. I would never put this on the outside. I don't know how you would make it airtight. For one thing, this thing's going to expand and contract so much, you're going to have gaps. But that seam where they come together, there's a, I don't know, there's a space there. You'd have to weather strip. It just seems like more of a hassle. So I don't know. Don't look at me that way. This is supposed to be an interior-exterior door. But
Right.
But here's what I discovered, and this is one of the things I would say. If you're tempted to put a Dutch door in your house, if you have a way of connecting them together and hanging them all together, because what you wind up with is 4 hinges. In other words, you don't want to just hang the bottom section and then come along and hang the top section without reference to the bottom, if that makes sense, because when you swing them open and shut, the gaps aren't going to line up.
Right.
So you want to find a way to have those somewhat connected. I came up with a system to do that, but it was an interesting experience, Alan. I was just saying, I guess partially what I learned was that they wanted to use some old hardware. He had some old doors up in his attic, and so this hardware is almost 100 years old. But you know those old-fashioned locks that have like the skeleton key and everything? Basically, they're huge. They're like 4 inches deep. They're about 3/4 inches wide, and you got to cut an opening in the door with a chisel and drills and everything.
Yes.
Well, I'm just going to be honest. With chiseling that space out, I busted off corners of the door at least twice. But you know what? Super glue fixes it immediately. I'm a big fan of super glue these years. So I took some super glue, put it on there. It was fixed. Nobody would even notice it. But partially it's because the material was just a little brittle. But I don't know. But it looks really cool. It's a really interesting look. But I thought, as long as we're talking about it, let's learn a little bit more about the history of the door and why would you even want one of these?
Okay. Well, let's start with Mr. Ed.
Okay.
That is exactly where the Dutch door came from, because
wait, you're saying Mr. Ed invented the Dutch?
Well, I'm saying Mr. Ed, or at least his ancestor.
Okay.
Back in the 16th, 17th century, horses are intelligent animals.
Oh,
so
yes.
Sir Edgar was his ancestor,
yes,
I guess.
so Sir Edgar there. Well, horses are intelligent animals, and they like to see what's going on. And if you just put one in a barn with nothing to look at, it's going to get into trouble.
Okay. Well, I don't blame them.
They're big and they're powerful and they kick and they bite and they chew and they cribbage. And so they invented the over and under door so that they could keep the horse in the barn, but they could open the door so the horse could look out and talk to other horses and see what's going on. And they found that it made them much better behaved.
Okay.
All right. Now, let's move to the kitchen, my favorite room in the house.
Right.
And in the 16th and 17th century, the kitchen had a fire in it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're talking, didn't they used to build kitchens in a separate little stone building?
Usually it was the stone building behind your pretty house.
Right. Okay.
And it's flaming hot in there, no matter what the weather is outside. So the stable door seemed perfect for the kitchen door, because now you could open the top of it and let the hot air out, but the kids, the dogs, the critters could not freely move back and forth in or out of the house.
Right.
It also became the gossip fence, where your neighbor could wander over and lean on the door and tell you what the hot gossip was.
Yeah.
Or you could get deliveries through here without letting somebody in the house.
I seem to remember a lot of growing up the Sunday morning comic strips of these old-fashioned, like Little Orphan Annie or something, where there might be a Dutch door and they have a pie cooling on the window or on the sill.
Absolutely.
Okay.
A great place to steal a pie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the Dutch door. The Dutch door, especially if you have small pets, is an incredibly good way of separating your space, because now you can leave the top open and you can still hear them.
Right.
Or you can even put, nothing says you can't put a window in the lower pane and the lower side of the door and see what they're doing. It's an old-fashioned idea whose utility really has never gone out of style.
Well, they're still making them. I mean, he had no trouble finding.
Oh no, they're all
online.
different shapes, sizes, prices. You'll find them from $300 on up, depending upon what style you want. So they're great doors. I ran into a lot of these working over in North Carolina.
Oh, really?
Older, turn of the century homes. A lot of older things that had the kitchen to the rear of the building. You know, the kitchen was more this. If there's going to be a fire, it's probably going to start in the kitchen. Let's put the kitchen back there so we can save the house, kind of thing. And you ran into a lot of these.
I think this would be it's probably a good thing for people, like I said, with pets, because I'm just picturing the scene, like, especially if you had it off of a kitchen. It's like, okay, it's getting hot in here. Just whip that top section open immediately, and then if you have the window open, you're getting some airflow. I think it's certain climates would be more suited to Dutch doors, though.
According to Brew Blaster, he also says too that he always thinks of restaurants with regards to these Dutch doors, like having like a small diner. Is there any reason for that? I mean, you're talking about potential accidents.
Well, thanks,
Dutch
Brew
doors.
Blaster. I wonder about that, but
I've worked in a restaurant in North Carolina that had a Dutch door as a way of closing off the kitchen during the prep time when they were making the most noise, and having the door open for food delivery. They would just put the tray, up on the sill, and you walked over and grabbed it and went and put it out on the table.
I could see a lot of uses for this now that I'm thinking of it, because especially if you've got kids, it's more or less creating a separation without totally shutting everybody out.
Exactly.
I think there's a lot of use for these. If you've got interesting ideas for how to utilize a Dutch door, get in touch with us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline, 901-683-0989. Well, strap in, everybody. When we come back here on Tool Talk Radio, we're going to find out what Allan did this week.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
I'm always thinking one step ahead, like a carpenter that makes stairs.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989, especially if you've got ideas for Dutch doors, or if you're a kid inventor and you want to tell us what you've invented, or maybe you invented something when you were a kid and you still use it to this day. Today is Kid Inventor Day.
I'll have to tell you the story about the youngest person to receive a patent.
Okay, that sounds good. Before we get to any of that, though, I just want to wrap up a few thoughts. When if you're just tuning in, I installed a Dutch door in a very old home. This home is almost 100 years old. And also, I'm not calling John, the homeowner, a hoarder, but he does save a few things. Up in his attic, he had a few of the old doors from when they... Basically, you know how it is, Allan. Back in the day, there was a door separating every single room. You had doors everywhere, and he wanted to open it up, so he took the doors out, and he threw them up in the attic. Well, because the reason is I'm installing this new door, but he wanted to use some of the old hardware, and so I took the doorknob off, and it has a really cool little plate. It's kind of one of those skeleton key door lock type things. And these doorknobs they're interesting, but they were really, really tarnished. They were like a greenish brown, really dark, and they look kind of dingy if you want to know the truth. Well, you know what I'm going to do with something like that. It's like so what I did is I took some 320 grit sandpaper, which is obviously a very fine sandpaper. You spend 5 minutes if you strategically sand off the doorknob and sand off the whatever you call that little plate, the key plate or something. It is amazing what a difference it makes. It's kind of like when you see these, somebody finds a gold coin in the mud and they rub it off and it's suddenly this treasure pops out of it. Well, it looks like that. I posted pictures on our Facebook page, and it's a one of a kind look though, because you leave little bits of the tarnish inside the grooves of this thing. And then you sand the edges, and they really pop like this shiny brass, and it's just a one-of-a-kind look that I love. and you didn't spend any money on new hardware. It's a cool option. So.
And you're not going to buy hardware like this. It's going to be thicker, heavier. It's designed to last a few hundred years.
Yeah, it looks cool, and it reminds me of that floor that you refinished where it was so distressed and damaged from whatever
the
those
little carpet
beetles.
weevils, yeah.
But it's a one of a kind once you bring it back to life, and it's pretty exciting. And I'm sure there's a solvent that would take all of it off, but we didn't really want that. We wanted to leave remnants of the distress. So, and I also want to just say one more thing before we move on. There was a time where I don't know if this makes me a purist or just maybe I was narrow-minded. I don't know, but there was a time in my woodworking career, I never even thought of using super glue for certain things. Mm-hmm. Well, I got to admit, over the last 5 years, I keep super glue on hand.
You've softened up.
Well, it's funny because I told you chiseling out this door. Well, okay, I could have used wood glue to fix it. I had wood glue handy, but then I'm like, okay, to put wood glue on, you have to put it on. Then I would have had to either tape it or clamp it. Then I couldn't touch it for 24 hours. Then I have to sand off the old whatever. I'm like, why did I waste my time with that stuff? You grab a tube of super glue, you put it on, and within seconds, it's glued back in place pretty securely.
Oh, yeah.
You sand off the little remnants, and you're done, and you're moving on with your life. I don't know why I was so, narrow-minded about super glue.
It took me 20 years to get you to use a battery, too. So, just hinting, Joe, just hinting.
Okay.
I have a random question with regards to your use of super glue.
Okay.
Why is it that you use it for wound care?
Well, that's where it came from, right, Allan?
That is exactly correct, because it would actually bond the fatty substances in skin.
Yeah.
Is that why it kind of gets hot?
Well,
Yes.
it's funny you say that, Max. Max is reading my mind. I wanted to say one thing about that. So, putting this door in, Allan, I used super glue twice. This wood was kind of not the best. It was like a pine.
Right.
It was anyway, and I had to well, there was one point when I put the super glue on, it came out really heavy, and I always keep a paper towel with me to wipe it up. And I wiped up the paper towel. I wiped it up really quick, and somehow it hit my fingers, and it was like almost scalding hot.
Yes.
It was hot. It wasn't just warm. And I've told you in the past how if you take super glue and you put it on like a tissue or something, it starts smoking, and it might even actually start on fire. I don't know, but it seemed to be that the more super glue, I guess what I'm wondering is, okay, is it true that the more super glue you get on the cloth, the hotter it gets? Because this was an unusually large amount of super glue I wiped up, and it literally, like, I had to drop it. It bumped my finger, and I'm like, ow, that was really hot. But
okay, well, in case you haven't noticed, when concrete is curing, it generates heat.
Yes.
So that's like when some of the dams that were built 30 years ago, they're still curing.
Right.
That stuff can be warm for 50 years. Mm-hmm. I think that's an actual accurate number. That's not even exaggeration.
You said the Hoover Dam could take 100 years to cure.
Could take 100 years
Right.
for the concrete in the center to actually go dormant.
Right.
To actually finish. So when you start talking about cyanoacrylate, which is what super glue is.
Oh, I talk about cyanoacrylate every day.
Cyanoacrylate that was originally of. It had medical implications, and then when they realized it pretty much glued anything together, you got the commercial version that you buy at the store, and there is a medical version that is used to piece your skin back together.
Right. It must be activated by oxygen, right?
Yes.
Because as soon as it hits, it comes in contact with air. It reminds me a little of, it seems like there's solvents. I can't remember if it's denatured alcohol or acetone, but when you open it, suddenly that steel container or whatever, that metal container that it comes in, it gets cold.
Yes.
So that has the reverse effect. It gets, yeah.
And it depends upon how it cures and what the effect is. But you give it like denatured alcohol, you rub any alcohol on your skin, because it evaporates so quickly, you get a cooling sensation.
Right, yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think I've actually had experience with medical grade super glue, because when I was a kid, I was playing inside of a vacuum box, and I cracked my head on the edge of a coffee table, and I remember getting glued in the back of my head and a smiley face lollipop afterwards.
Wow.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
That explains everything, Max. Now we understand. Playing in. Okay. I'm sure there's a story we'll get to with that. But all right. Well, I just wanted to say that. So don't throw away that old hardware. Get some 320 grits sandpaper, and then super glue is your friend, but be careful because it can burn your house down, I think. So, all right, go ahead, Max. Let's shift gears. So,
Oh, the humanity.
I mean, if we're not careful, Allan, this could take us through the end of the show. I mean, I didn't even tease what you did this week because it's a pretty long list, but you're making up for lost time, right? I mean,
Well, the phone calls start coming.
Yeah. I don't know why you answer those. You'll never learn, man. It's like.
Wait, I'm trying to think of why I answer this call. Oh, I want the money.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why-
All right.
That's
Well,
why I
that's
answer
true. This
those
isn't
calls.
charity. I mean, I give you grief, but at least you're getting paid for this. so.
I do what I can.
Yeah.
So, all right. I love the phone call that begins, I have water coming out from under my driveway. Is this bad?
I will say something
Let's
about
just
this.
start with, yes, it is.
Can I? Sorry, I just want to ask you something though, because I've noticed a trend. Max, maybe you've noticed this about Allan as well. I don't know if you've trained your friends this way to cut through the chit chat and just get to the point, but you always say, "I had a phone call and it began with this." Is it because you've kind of trained them? Don't waste my time with how's the weather and what are you up to and how's your grandma and just get to the point. Why are you calling me?
Generally, I get phone calls from people that know me or are referred to me. And my favorite one ever was a phone call from a very distressed lady that had just moved here from New York. And she called and she says, well, I have a friend that gave me your number and I have a strange comment. I think there's a pig in my tree.
All right, that wins the.
And I just went, all right, is
contest.
it kind of gray, kind of pinkish looking? Yeah. I said, does it big round ears like Mickey Mouse? Yeah. And I said, it's not a pig. That's a possum.
Okay.
You're from New York City, aren't you? I could tell by the accent. She's
Right.
like, well, yeah. I said, don't mind him. He ain't going to mind you. You just got a neighbor that'll eat your ticks and make bugs go away.
Leave him alone, yeah.
Leave him alone. He don't mind you.
Okay.
So I love, I just sway people, give me a call. So.
All right. Not sorry for the digression, but it's just an observation I made.
It's all right. So, yeah. So, this is fairly common as neighborhoods age.
Okay.
Of if you see water just in the gutter and it hasn't been raining and there's no real reason for that water, but it's not like somebody's draining a pool.
Are you talking about running water down the curb?
Yeah,
and
there's and it's just going to be a little bit. That generally means you or your neighbor has a pinhole leak in your water supply line.
May I just say something before you move on with your story? I am saluting you because I think about that a lot. If it's the middle of July and it hasn't rained in 4 weeks and you're seeing water somewhere, that's unnatural. There shouldn't be a puddle out by your driveway.
Exactly.
And it's like, so don't just ignore that and go, there's water there.
Take a few minutes and do a little investigation, maybe walk up. And, I'll be going there today as soon as I get out of here. And we're going to be climbing up halfway up a hill, and we're going to dig about a 4-foot deep hole.
Sounds fun to me.
Because
okay.
we know where the wet spot in the hill is, so.
Okay, well, here we go. The adventure begins. You're listening to Tool Talk Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to my mic on, Max. You've done that the last 2 weeks.
No, it's on.
All right. And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning. Here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989, especially if you've got mysterious water sitting in your yard or in your driveway or in front of your house. We were just talking about it. Allan gets these phone calls. We're finding out what Allan did this week, which turns out to be a lot. And One of the things you were dealing with was some mysterious water, I guess.
Can I ask a question about mysterious water?
Okay.
I saw a YouTube video. I am not sure if this is real, but it essentially looked like this patch of grass had like an edema to it.
Oh, I've seen the
Where it's
underground,
where you like have to stab it in order to like get the water to spew back out. It's like, is that
All right, that is actually called turf blistering.
turf blistering?
Turf blistering, and in certain types of grasses, you can actually wind up accidentally walking across a lake
yeah.
because some of it is so intertwined it'll hold together under your weight. So yes, turf blistering is a very real thing.
That's interesting.
I've seen those videos too, yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's like poofs up almost like it's like a foot tall.
Yeah.
20 feet wide. It makes this big thing, and then they stab it, and water just flies out of it.
It does. Basically, that happens because the soil is not absorbing the water as fast as it came down.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
pooling up under something.
Yeah.
So you'll find that happens a lot in landscaping. If somebody used a lot of that junky that you should never use plastic
That's what I
landscape
thought.
fabric.
I was thinking, what if they put landscape fabric to keep the weeds out? Then they put dirt. Then they put something.
Yeah, that
but
stuff is terrible. Don't do that.
It's probably not good for the environment.
It is really bad for the environment.
Okay.
So, yeah, but turf blistering is a thing. Also, right now, Memphis has experienced snow melt, which
yeah.
is not something we're used to. We got, depending upon the part of town you were in, anywhere from 5 to almost 12 inches of snow.
And there's still snow in parts of town, but we had a gradual thawing. Is that better for our grass? Like, does it soak in much better?
Our water table loves that. 'cause
Okay, nice gradual defrost.
It had plenty of time to absorb and soak that water in nice and deep.
Okay.
So yeah, so a lot of people, I got a few phone calls, not for the turf, but, I got water pooling in don't worry about it. That's just snow melt. Give it another day or two and we'll see what it does.
Yeah.
The one I got today is, however, a pinhole leak in a pipe.
Oh, boy.
It ain't going to cure, so the only thing to do is dig it up and patch it.
Are we talking a drain pipe or the water feed
No,
line?
this is
The
a
water
pressurized water feed.
line. So those you can't, that's...
That is when you get the running water. I don't mean like the toilet won't flush and it's backed up. That's tree roots in your septic. That's an entirely different problem. This is going to be, when we finally dig out 4 feet of soil, is going to be the one tube, the one pipe that goes into your house that brings the water in from your municipal connection.
So is that one of those where maybe somebody dug where they weren't supposed to dig, or did it wear out, or did
It's
it...
50 years old. This is not
Okay.
this is not an unusual problem.
Okay.
I say this now because a lot of neighborhoods in Memphis, if your house was built in the 50s, 60s, or 70s, you're at this age. So I'm giving you all a little preemptive warning. If you see a little water seeping up and it doesn't quit, doesn't go away, if there's not a good, logical, natural reason why there's water, it's time to get an investigator to have somebody look at it, because you could have a leak. And
Better to be outside than in, though.
yeah, you don't want it you don't want this to happen underneath your slab, because
Right.
that really gets expensive. The other one is of our local light, gas, and water municipality is very good at letting you know that your water's been on for more than 24 hours.
We got a letter in the mail because we were dripping the faucets because it was below freezing. So,
Yep.
yeah.
If the meter comes on and they catch it, they'll send you a little gram that goes, hey, you might want to look at your water because you got water running, whether you think you have it running or not. So pretty good. On a happier note, one of the other things I got to do this week.
Wait, sorry. But before you move on, because I think this is important. So you said you got a call because one of your clients had a water leak. Well, okay, we know how leaks work, and especially you said this one you had to go up a hill.
Oh, yeah, we're going to be digging uphill.
Okay, well, Allan, my house is not that far from the street, but I know homes where they could be 100 yards from the street,
Yes.
and you want to detect the leak. Do we have better detecting tricks or detecting way so you're not just digging up the entire trench. Because hopefully what you can do is dig up just that area.
Yeah, I'm just going to
fix it. But
there is actually, happily for me, because of the way the yard is laid out, of not only is the water seeping down the hill, under the hill, it has also made its way to the surface.
Okay,
so there is now a spot that says, it's kind of like a pirate map. It might as well have an X and say dig here.
Okay, well, don't laugh for this question, but I don't care. I'm going to ask it anyway. Like, I'm not saying necessarily you get out there with a stethoscope or something with your ears, but is there, I guess I'm just wondering, I mean, what if this happens to you and you don't want to dig up your whole yard? What is some tricks of the trade of, like, narrowing the field of where is this leak coming from? So
dude, you pulled out my secret trick.
Oh. So that's not that far-fetched.
No, I have
Because if you
done
hear a
that.
little...
Yes, I
Okay.
have done that numerous times. You can buy a very inexpensive stethoscope, little $10 stethoscope at any medical, your local drugstore carries them.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy one, and of course, getting the people around you to shut up long enough and quit moving, you can get out there and you can actually hear the hiss as to where you're looking for this leak.
Okay, now generally speaking, I'm sorry, I don't want to move on too quick from this because
No,
this
this
is a problem
big topic.
people are going to face, especially with this cold weather. So what I'm thinking is, as a rule of thumb, okay, like I said, we're not a good example because our house is only, I think, 40 feet from the street. It's pretty
Right.
close, and I know where my water meter is, and I know where my kitchen. Okay, I guess is there a rule of thumb? Do you start at your water meter out
Yes.
at the street, and then how do you? I mean, like I said, how do you track where the line is going without like a metal detector or something?
In a lot of cases, you're not going to know.
Okay.
Generally speaking, you can take a string, have somebody stand there at the water meter, and you can string to the house. And I would just string to the middle of the house.
So generally, they would probably go to about the
Something
middle.
in that line, give or take a few feet one side or the other, is generally where that line is going to be run.
Okay. Because, yeah, I mean, that's detective work, and digging 10 feet away from the leak is not really helpful.
No,
you got to find
you're-
it.
Well, then you're chasing the mud. Then you dig down, and then you start digging to the side, and you end up excavating. I had a neighbor that ended up excavating almost half a front yard,
Right.
trying to find a pipe.
Yeah.
There's even ground penetrating radar these days. So I mean, we
Yeah, I
can
keep feeling like
find
there's-
that pipe.
I keep feeling like there's an app for something like this. Like,
There is a wide variety of resources available, but a really cheapy stethoscope is it doesn't work all the times. But
Yeah.
if you got a hard enough leak that's making enough of a hiss,
Yeah.
you can hear it.
Okay. All right. So it wasn't all that far-fetched of a...
No, I do that all the time.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like that's 90% of it is you got to find where it's at. And if you can
You do.
successfully do that. So don't just rent the bulldozer and start digging,
Oh.
try to fine-tune it a little.
Well,
'cause-
and this is when you discover not all shovels are created equal.
Oh, okay. That's its own. I think
That is
we
a
teased that as
whole
well.
topic. When we get back, I'll throw in at least the 5 different kinds of shovels that I own.
Okay. All right. Well, this is turning into a very dynamic episode of Tool Talk Radio, and we're only halfway done. So stay tuned, everybody. We're coming up for hour 2 of Tool Talk Radio.
News Talk 98.9, The Roar of Memphis. Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com. Great nephew of Herman Ferris Gilbreth. We were just talking about one of your relatives off the air. We're going to learn about him in a second. And our buddy Max over there behind the glass. Some people just have epic names. You were just saying, great nephew. What is this? This is your great uncle or somebody?
That's my grandfather.
Oh, your grandfather, Herman Ferris Gilbreth. That is a name that feels like it would leave its mark in history. Did he invent something? He sounds like an inventor.
He was very well known in Amarillo, Texas. So for those of you listening in Texas, yes, I'm over here now.
Okay, if anybody's got a cooler name than Herman Ferris Gilbreth, let us know, because that's an epic name. I mean, I've always loved the name Herman anyway. I mean,
Herman Munster.
Herman Munster, but there's
Pee-wee Herman.
I haven't known many Hermans in my life, but every one of them I knew was interesting. I don't know why that is.
Oh, they all live very interesting lives in those days.
Okay, well, if you've got something, if you've got a name as interesting as that, give us a call or text at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And if you are just tuning in, we were in the middle of Allan's Week in Review. It's taking a little longer because, for one thing, he had like 50 different tasks that he did this week, and I kept interrupting with questions. But you, Allan, you were talking about a water leak underground with the water feed line, which is high pressure, and if it's not addressed, it's going to cause a sinkhole in your yard. For one thing, you're wasting all that water. It causes a lot of problems, and so I was trying to get a little more information on what the average homeowner should do in a situation like that, because we were talking about tracking the leak down and all the other factors.
Well, all right, I did one a couple of years ago that was really easy because it was about 6 feet from the house, and basically right outside of the landscaping was a pond.
Yeah, that makes it a little easier to deduct.
It's kind of like, okay, we know where the problem is. The real problem, I had another neighbor that had one actually develop under the pad of his house.
Yeah, that's not as cool.
And that was some effort to get everything dug out, find the leak, repair the leak. Fixing the leak is the least problematic part of this.
That's how it always is. It's
honestly, especially with the new clip-in-place technologies we have for the piping and stuff, fixing that is easy.
Right. It's the
digging
prep
up,
work.
digging up 4 feet deep worth of soil so you can get down there and fix the problem. That's a little different.
Right. So, okay. Well, I think we covered it pretty well, but I think it's an important topic, especially with the cold weather we're about to get hit with here.
Somebody's going to get a pipe burst, and this is the other reason why, if you have landscaping and stuff planned for the spring, have your local municipality come out and mark your utilities.
Right. Yeah.
They'll come out with the little box. They'll tell you where your lines are. And if you don't know where your sewer cleanout is, or you don't apparently have one, you don't know where it is, you got one, have somebody find it for you and dig it up, put a cap back on it, make sure it's not full of roots, and that will save you. Your future self will love you for the next 10 years if you make these type things easy on yourself.
Right. Don't let them get overgrown or anything like that. And I'm sorry, before we move on, one last comment, because there's people in my life that have made these ridiculous words. They've said, well, we've never, because we always talk about when it gets cold here in the Mid-South, drip your faucets.
Oh, yeah.
And especially it's going to be in the teens overnight. And I've had people that I know, and they say, well, we've never had a problem with that in the past. We don't worry about it. Well, you know what? Just because your pipes never froze in the past, well, you know what? Maybe there's a squirrel up in your attic that just moved all the insulation away from that one pipe up there, and now you are going to have it exposed. I don't know. That's just not the logic I respect. Well, I'm sorry.
let me say one thing about your outside spigots.
Yeah.
If your house is over 30 years and you've never had an outside spigot problem, and you don't worry about it. I don't put the little caps on. Nothing's ever happened. I can tell you with some certainty that it's going to happen.
And why? These things are $3. Just get one and drip the faucets and do your due diligence.
Do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Well, that means my water bill's going to be $5 higher.
Yeah.
Have you seen what replacing a pipe in a wall is going to cost?
Right.
I promise it's more than that $3.
Exactly.
Put a crowbar in your wallet and do what you're supposed to do.
So our public service announcement. We've done our duty, Allan. So okay. What else did you do this week?
Well, I got to do a great thing as an upgrade of somebody's looking at a new home and they just got into it. And before they move in, we're going to go through and we're going to update all of the wall sockets.
Not a bad idea, man.
It's a 40,
Before you
50
stick
year
a
old
couch in front of that wall, let's do. Okay.
It's a 40, 50-year-old house, so let's just knock it out.
Yeah.
Let's just
it's
get
empty,
this done.
Just go through.
Why, let's.
What do? You just turn everything off?
Yeah, just turn everything off. Put your little portable lights up so you can see what you're doing, and you do it during the daylight.
Right.
Most of the time you can see really well anyway. But let's just go ahead and get them changed out. And because of when this house was built, there are a few light fixture, wall sockets that are higher up the wall.
Oh, yeah.
So this is where like a side table would go, or it's above a counter or something like that. And we're going to replace those with new sockets that now actually have USB plugs in them.
Yeah. Then you just
and
charge your phone up.
Man, that's going to be so convenient for the next. And again, it's kind of like 5, 10, you're going to be here a few years. You bought a house. You're planning to be here 5 to 10 years. This was just one of those little features that you are going to thank yourself for so much over the next 10 years. Because now you're not going to have a wall socket problem.
Mm-hmm.
You're not. Because if you had one, you're going to find it. If you got a wiring issue, you're going to find it. Take care of it now. And the convenience of while you're in the kitchen, just being able to plug your phone charger in right there and plug your phone in, or any other device that's USB powered.
One of the things I like about these USB outlets is you're eliminating one more possible failure point, because I know, we have our USB chargers and it's like, okay, well, usually they go into, I forget what it's called, a brick or a block or something.
Yeah, they usually have the little white block thing that you plug them into. And
so you plug into that, then you plug into the outlet. Well, one of those things fail from time to time. So, you just eliminated the need for the block. You just plug the wire straight in.
Baby straight in there, and it's so good. And for all of you out there that love to garden, the next project I got coming up this weekend is we're going to be setting up the folding tables and the grow tables and getting ready to start the plants for March and April planting. So if you're a gardener, it's kind of time to go.
These grow tables, I feel like, for new listeners, you might have to tell people what you're talking about. So,
well, there's a lot of the old-fashioned folding table was particle board with a laminate on it. The new ones are actually a die cast out of some type of polycarbonate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a plastic top table. So a little bit of water is not going to hurt it. So we're going to be setting up a bunch of those. And the biggest thing is we have the LED grow lights now. So we don't have to worry about the bulbs and all that stuff. So the biggest thing we're going to build over a few of these tables is just basically a little PVC pipe play set so that we can dangle the lights over the pots of dirt.
Is this inside?
Yeah, this is going to be an inside job.
Okay.
This is going to be basically outfitting not a basement, a garage.
Okay.
I have a sort of question. Well, it's on behalf of one of our texters, Angel. Semi-unrelated, but it's on the topic of water. She was wondering, what if your house is built on a slab? Do you still need to drip the water?
Yes.
Angel. I mean, come on. I know she's been listening for years. I mean...
Well, the answer is, all right, are we worried about the pipe under the slab bursting? No. What we are worried about is that pipe in that outside wall, generally in your kitchen, that the only thing between you and the outside world is whatever is on the outside of your house and that pipe.
It needs one little failure point. If there's any insulation missing, or if it just gets cold. Sometimes that cold will just penetrate through. So,
and the biggest thing, and we've talked about walking around your house a million times, and I'm going to throw it in one more time because the weather's pretty nice.
Yeah.
It's going to be 40, almost 50 degrees today. Not a bad time to look for penetrations through the armor of your house.
Right.
Because any place you can see daylight, or you see a hole, or, a piece of siding has pulled loose, now's a great time to lock that down, because these are all access points that cold air, it's not can find its way through, is going to find its way through.
And of course, we're pretty soon here, I think within the next 24 or 48 hours, it is going to drop into the teens overnight. And as miserable as that is, it's actually a really good time also to track down the leaks, because if you have any drafts in your house, you're going to feel it, especially if you have one of those nifty laser thermometers you've got. But just, you don't even need that. Just walk up to the window and you're going to feel where it's
walk around with some bare feet on. You'll find those leaks real fast
and address it then. So, all right, well, this is going to be interesting. Enough of this cold weather talk. Let's talk about a fun summertime activity. If you're in Denmark, we're going to talk about the world's tallest sandcastle in Blockhouse, Denmark.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
All you got to do is let us disassemble you. We're not banging rocks together here. We know how to put a man back together. So that's a complete reassembly. New vitals, spit shine on the old ones. Frankly, you ought to be paying us.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And we'll come back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And remember, if you text us, you can also send pictures. In a minute, we're going to get to our great moments in building history, but I just wanted to respond to one of our listeners over on Facebook. He's replying to our conversation about Dutch doors, which are those doors that separate at the top and the bottom. And I was saying this particular door that I wanted to put in, that I was putting in, I don't know that this door is great for outside. I feel like it would have leaked and it would have been drafty, but Lee says Dutch doors can be weatherproofed. Put a rabbit in between the doors, then use copper weather stripping. I think he means rabbit joint. Don't slaughter a rabbit and put its entrails in between. I don't know what he. Let's just be clear here. We're not talking about a rabbit. But hey, Lee, good tip. No, I mean, I don't disagree. I think what I'm saying is this particular door, it just wasn't the top end door. I feel like if you're going to get a Dutch door for the outside of your home, spend a little more to go first class. And Lee, I wonder if you've put a Dutch door in. I'd love to let us know if you have. But
all right, well, I think we need to tell everybody what is a rabbit joint or throwing in a rabbit.
Right.
Because last time I actually heard somebody just go, put the rabbit in it. They were quite British.
That,
They were quite British, actually. So
right.
That is a very British way of pronouncing it.
Yeah.
All right, what is a rabbit joint? A rabbit joint is a recess in a piece of wood that another piece of wood can slide into.
Yeah. Now, in this situation, this wood was about 1 3/4 inches thick. So basically right down the middle of it, half the wood on the top drops in the front, the other half on the back drops up. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, what they would do is they basically have a raised edge.
Yeah.
That there would be a raised edge on the bottom door that the top door, when it slid shut, would give you a nice seam so that you didn't have the outside world invading you.
Right. Yeah. And if you want to just think of it this way, if you look at the side of it, if you're looking at this the profile, it almost looks like rabbit ears, it looks like a rabbit's head. There's a lot of, maybe that's a segment we need to do, talking about woodworking joints, dado joints and mortise and tendon and butt joints. I mean, let's face it,
It's pretty funny. And then we get into everybody's favorite, dovetails.
The trickiest, is the trickiest,
I will freely tell you.
If you want to watch a really, really, if you want to watch some craftsmanship, I watched a video where a lot of these Japanese woodworkers, these guys that have been doing this for 60 years, they were making dovetail joints, compound dovetail joints with more than one edge, and they were doing it with a handsaw.
Yeah.
You talk about precision work.
Sashimono.
Yeah, and chisels. I mean, these guys, and they put those things together, and you couldn't get air between those gaps. So.
No.
Anyway, but hey, Lee, thanks for chiming in, and we appreciate all of our listeners getting in touch. But let's shift gears, you guys.
And now, great moments in building history.
Well, as we said, we're kind of tired of talking about the cold, so let's talk about something. Let's talk about a warm weather activity. Even though it's the ironic thing is we're talking about Denmark, and now I don't know what the weather is out there in the summer. I'm imagining it's not terrible, right? I mean,
It's Denmark.
Okay,
they're a little further north than we are. They're used to real winter.
Well,
we just pretend most of the year.
In 2021, they decided, what the heck, we're going to make the world's tallest sandcastle, which is an ongoing pursuit because there was a period where the world's tallest sandcastle was like 40 feet. There was a period, and so every year there's somebody trying to outdo the structure. So just to give you some stats here, this is 640 tons of sand, which, okay, that is, 6,400 tons of sand.
I was about to say, no.
No, I'm trying to think of how many cars that comes to. A car is what, between like about 2 tons or...
That is somewhere between 30 and 60 cars.
Okay, it's a lot.
Depending upon what you buy.
30 and... Are you sure? Isn't it like 300? Okay, whatever. It's a lot. And this is a sandcastle. And now, in fairness, some of the structure on the inside is wood because this is not... I mean...
Well...
and I guess there's rules that apply when you're competing like this or...
Yeah, well, they designed the sandcastle to actually make it through the winter.
Right.
it does have a wooden skeleton inside of it.
Yeah.
We should tell everybody, if you haven't looked it up already, it is shaped like a pyramid, a very durable structure design, and it does also include quite a bit of glue and quite a bit of clay to get it to stick together. And it is also not just a bag of sand. This is sand that has been compressed to about the consistency of sandstone.
Okay. Now, who wants to tackle naming the artist here who designed this? Because I'm looking at his name, and he's got like 15 letters in his first name.
Wilfried Steiger?
I don't know. I'm seeing Sculpta Park in Blocus or...
that was one of the artists. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, the castle was designed basically to kind of represent what we can get done with the coronavirus pandemic, and nothing's going to hold us back.
Well, that's right, because this is 2021 in the thick of things. So, yeah.
And it's interesting that the previous record was held in 2019, just at the cusp of the virus, and it was in Germany. So take that, Germany.
Okay. Well, they probably have a lot of rivalry going on between them, right? So,
well, now, if you've ever watched... Now, all right, so why does a sandcastle have anything at all to do with Tool Talk or fixing your home?
Right.
Because there are an amazing number of good lessons here. One, the proper material, the proper density. So when you're looking at a sandcastle, you are looking at a lot of great principles that are used in modern building today. We've learned a lot experimenting with sandcastles and Legos.
Well, the most obvious thing... Oh, yeah. Well, the most obvious thing that you see here in looking at this castle is the basic structure of this is a giant cone or pyramidal shape. I mean, and it's, obviously the base is pretty wide. But what's interesting, though, is you form this cone, and then you start decorating or whatever. You start cutting out the details from the top down, because obviously you can't be climbing on this thing unless, I guess, you had a crane holding you up. But it makes sense that you would do it from the top down, because as you're cutting away, sand and material is going down.
Yep, it's falling away. So
it looks like a lot of work, man.
You are looking at an amazing amount of work when you get to one of these things. So you're looking at 21.1 meters high, which is roughly about 70 feet.
Yeah.
So this thing is not small. You're looking at more than 5 tons of sand. I think the final product is about 6,400.
Okay.
They did reinforce it because they did want it to last more than a single season.
Well, I wondered how much durability this would have. Yeah, and like if it's coated with some, or
it's been sealed. They've given a little bit of a glue seal on it. Now, what is amazing is the amount of detail that is cut into this.
Mm-hmm.
And it is all cut by artisans.
Yeah.
It's not like somebody got a big 3D printer out there and printed themselves a giant sandcastle. This is hand done, hand handled, hand designed. The windows, everything on this thing, just astounding. But the biggest thing you'll take away from this is, and we've talked about this a lot of times on air, whether you're building a fire pit or a swimming pool or an addition to your home, it always starts at a great foundation.
Yeah, you don't have a sandcastle without I'm looking at this thing. It's just, the foundation is everything, really.
Once that you got that right, it's pretty easy to build the rest of it. And I say easy with big rabbit ears on either side of it. There's a tremendous amount of talent in getting this thing done. So, this is one of those great examples of plan your work and work your plan.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, so they expected it to stand for 6 months. I haven't seen the latest state of this thing. I guess it's gone.
It's still up, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
5 years later, huh?
Yeah,
or 4 years later.
I think things still up, as I recall. I'd have to go look at the exact.
Well, that's another thing. Do you just leave it till it just nature takes it, or do you just
Sure.
bulldoze the thing, or
Depends on how many tourists are showing up.
Yeah,
I don't know if nature could take this though if there's glue involved. Although I heard there's only like 10% clay involved, which is kind of cool.
But just enough. It's just enough to keep it up.
Well, I feel like there's a little concrete conversation that might stem out of this discussion, but we have some more things to share about the world's tallest sandcastle in Blaukhaus, if I'm pronouncing that right, Denmark. We're going to continue that when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan. News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
And welcome back to Tool Talk Radio. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. You can call or text us at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And speaking of the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline, before we get back to our discussion of great moments in building history, let's talk about our good buddy Jay Hill. There we go. We're going to be seeing him in a couple of weeks over at the home show of the Mid-South over at the Agri Center. But Jay, now Jay is the man to call when you have anything to do with the exterior protection of your home, from roofing to gutters to siding to windows and all interior remodeling except kitchens. He really makes a point of saying that.
Yeah.
Did he have a traumatic event in the past with his kitchen remodel or something?
Well, kitchens and bathrooms are just different animals from the rest of the house.
You know what it is? I know exactly what it is. Jay is a man who likes to get in there, get the job done, and move on to the next project.
Mm-hmm.
A kitchen remodel is, let's face it,
you're going to be there a while.
Event.
It's also a marriage ender.
Jay is a wise man, so he leaves that to the anyway.
Leave that to the specialists that do bathrooms and kitchens.
But if you have for one thing, Jay is always 5 stars with the Better Business Bureau. He's a GAF Master Elite Installer. He has a great business culture over there at Big M Roofing and Remodeling. I don't know how he tracks these guys. I guess he must pay them well, treat them well, and he finds the best technicians in the city, basically. But Jay is the man to call when you want to. For one thing, when you're talking about the exterior protection of your home, you're talking about systems. These things may look decorative to you, but there is a function and form for everything in on the roof, on siding, on gutters, on windows. And if they're working harmoniously, they're going to keep your house protected and lower your utility bills as well. But also, Jay is he's in a unique situation because he's a former insurance agent, and that means that he has the expertise to help you if you have a homeowner's claim. And that's one of the things he's really helped a lot of people in, because if you have damage to your home that may or may not be covered by your homeowner's insurance, you really need an advocate. And so Jay should be the first person you call before you call anyone else. He'll come over, he'll do a free consultation, he'll look over all of the damage, and if there is a path forward, man, is that an exciting prospect. Instead of something that was daunting and scary, now you're in a situation where you're going to get that problem taken care of, and you're going to save a lot of money. Allan and I both had our roofs replaced that way, and I can testify it is an exciting prospect. And so get in touch with Jay. He also encourages you to call him directly, which, as I say, we have a very big sports event coming up Call him in the middle of that and see if he answers the phone. I want to put this to the test, but get in touch with him. You can reach him at 901-484-5645 or go to bigmroofingandremodeling.com. Well, before the break, in our great moments in building history, we're talking about the Blockhouse or Blockhouse, whatever it is. It's in Denmark. It's the world's tallest sandcastle. And we were like, well, what does that have to do with home improvement or something? But, I mean, first of all, there are things, immediately I'm thinking of concrete. I'm just thinking of structure. We're talking about form and function. And there's always lessons to be learned when you build something. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you build something out of paper mache. You're going to learn about engineering. You know what I mean? It's like...
You do. There's so much to look at with something like this. And I did look it up, and it made it through March of 2022.
Okay, that's not bad. That's beyond their 6 months project. It made it through the winter.
That's it. It made it quite a while. You start with, we talked about the foundation of this thing and how big it is, because it is a pyramid shape. The foundation is critically important. The decoration, the materials used, how they're used, the condition they're in, all of these things go to whether or not your building project is going to be a success. Whether you're building a doghouse or a fire pit, or you're trying to build a 7,000-ton, 70-foot tall sand sculpture,
right? There
is planning, and I'm going to throw in, get your plan complete. Don't just kind of look at it and go, hey, I think I want a 10 by 10 utility room.
Well, yeah.
Well, okay, that's a great idea, but what about your local code? What about now? Is it going to be plumbed? How are you going to insulate it? Is there going to be, what's going into this room, what's coming out? Because if nothing else, at the minimum, it's going to have electricity. So having a good working plan of, like these guys did, there were 30, if you think about it, 30 different sculptors all working on this at the same time.
Absolutely.
That took some planning.
Yeah. Did you have something, Max?
I was just going to say, we were talking about, in relation to concrete and other materials, stuff like that. You could say, like, the proper material for the proper place at the proper time. I was wondering if with, like, sand, because I never really think about the idea of concrete having a curing period. Is there a curing period for when you use sand?
Well, there is a compaction and a type of sand.
And it's also not dry. I mean, when you're building a sandcastle at the beach, you have a certain amount of moisture involved.
Well, you do, and you have also the sand compressor. Mm-hmm. You honestly have a device out there that crushes the sand down and together, and the different type of grains of sand hold together better than others.
Right.
Certain beaches in the world are custom designed for beautiful sandcastles, and others are not.
Well, because all sand is not created equal. If you go to the Bahamas, the sand is kind of white, and I think they even said some of it is made up of crushed shells and things like
coral.
That. You go to Iceland, and you might have lava sand and things like that. It could be black sand.
Or you can go to the Black Beach in Hawaii and be on, honestly, leftover volcanic, stuff.
Exactly.
So the big thing, and I'm going to throw this in real quick for if you're planning a spring project, of when you go to your big box store, you go to your hardware store, and you're looking around, there is going to be different kinds of very fine gravel and sand mixtures that do different things. The biggest one I'm going to pick up is the difference between, you may see what's called play sand, and you will see something called paving sand. And play sand is designed kind of like sand you would find in an hourglass. It's designed to slide past each other. So it's perfect for your sandbox. Somebody to play in.
So you can clean your kids off before they come in the house.
You can knock the dirt off of them,
Yeah.
Of paving sand, on the other hand, the actual structure of the little rock crystals in it are designed to lock in place so that your cobblestone or whatever you just put in has a much better chance of locking in place and staying, because you used the proper kind of sand.
Right. We had to do that. We put some paver stone. We made a little paver stone sidewalk in our front yard, and I'll tell you, it works. It's kept out weeds and things from growing in between, and it keeps it stable even among a lot of rain.
And over the years, you're talking about curing on concrete. What you have here in the sand is compaction and settling. So depending upon the type of sand that you have, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, for somebody out there I know is going to look at the Discovery Channel and go, all right, Allan, what is singing sand?
Oh,
and
never heard of that one.
There are actually sand dunes in this world. When the wind blows across them, the little crystals in the sand rub against each other and make a sound.
Now that's interesting.
You can actually hear the sand moving. So when your home project, again, if you want the kids playing in it, you're going to get the play sand. Another big thing is, before you put in any structure, if you want it to be permanent and you want it level, that is where you're going to get a tamper and several bags of sand.
Right.
Because sand, once it locks in place, once it gets wet, it does not want to move.
No, it stays put, man. So
it doesn't want to go anywhere. So when you get, we're looking at, like you said, your cobblestone pathway. You got that dug down, you put a good sand base under it, you fill in those gaps with good paving sand, and those blocks aren't going to move.
No, it's worked really good. So, one other thing I want to just say about this, because I'm always fascinated with people. Let's just face it. If you make something, especially if you write a story or if you make a piece of art, you always, let's just be honest, you kind of want that art to be around. You want to be able to pick this book up or you want to look at this painting that you made. Well, I'm always fascinated with artists that work in a temporary medium. I was watching this one documentary about this woman that does stage design, and she does temporary art gallery installations, and she loves the temporary nature of her work, which I find interesting. I don't know. These are people that must just be able to live in the moment. It's like making something and putting this much work into it and then tearing it down is an odd thing to me. It's like, I don't know.
Well, it took almost a year to finish this.
I mean, well, look at like the Buddhist monks. They literally have sand sculptures or like sand, like sand designs in the ground, and so they recognize the beauty of impermanence. Yeah,
there's something to that. So, but it's a cool structure. It's worth. You can find videos about this on YouTube and everything, and it's the current record. What's going to be the next one? 70 feet. I mean, it's almost 70 feet tall. So.
What's going to be the Burj Khalifa of sand structures?
No kidding. I mean, how much taller are we going to get here? It's getting a little out of hand. So, but we'll be keeping an eye on it. I had one more thought about this before we move on, and we'll talk about that when we come back here on Tool Talk Radio.
Tool Talk Radio with Joe and Allan.
People really don't know how to finish wood properly.
News Talk 98.9, the roar of Memphis.
Yeah, I was wondering when we'd hear from him. Anyway, welcome back to Tool Talk Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson with Thor's Hammer, Carpentry and Wood Turning, here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth from darkoakmedia.com and our pal Max over there behind the glass. There's just enough time for a quick call or text at the Big M Roofing and Remodeling Hotline at 901-683-0989. And if you're just tuning in, we're talking about, we're going to move along, although I have one little parting thought about this. We're talking about the world's tallest sandcastle, which, let's get technical, it is 69 feet tall in Blokhus, Denmark. And I'm not going to bother trying to pronounce the artist's name. Oh, no, the artist actually had an easy-to-pronounce name.
Yeah, Wilfred Steiger.
Okay. Anyway, I did have an observation about this movie before we move along, because, I mean, we all know what's going on weather-wise. We've seen what's happening to our friends in Los Angeles, and then in North Carolina, we had those terrible storms. Every year we're dealing with hurricanes and things like that. Well, Allan, I just had an observation about this. Do you remember on Great Moments in Building History about 6 months ago, we were talking about the construction of teepee design.
Right.
The Native American design for teepees. And we were talking about how resilient and how strong these structures were and how they could withstand winds up against because the the curved nature of it. Well, when I was looking at some of these sandcastles that we were in researching it, well, this one, we said pyramid shape, but technically it is a cone shape. It is shaped like a pyramid. And some of the other sandcastles that have won the contest over time have a similar structure. Well, if we're talking about rebuilding and trying to resist nature, let's just say, do we need to go back to something like this? Is a cone an optimal design for resisting? Like, would that be the ultimate hurricane-proof home? Something that's more cone-shaped or something?
I mean, it mimics nature because look at anthills and look at mountains.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, I don't know. Maybe it's not the look everybody wants, but I just think there might be something here.
Well, you're getting into the old argument of form versus function.
Right.
And you're also getting to the aesthetics of something and what's popular and what's not. I hate to say it, but when the British Empire, covered the world, you kind of wound up with a building style that came from a country that didn't necessarily have to deal with some of the weather that we deal with now.
Good point.
So, looking at alternative building styles has been going on now for 40, 50 years that I can think of easily.
Right.
So, yeah, it's probably not a terrible time to go, well, let's think about new roofing technologies. Let's think about old roofing technologies. Is steel an option? Is clay an option? Is
cob?
Cob has actually made a comeback lately, and if you don't know what cob is, it's mud balls.
Right.
It's mud and straw. So there's lots of options out there that, are always worth taking a quick look at and going, is this a better idea?
I don't know. I'm just sitting here thinking of, okay, you talked about nature, Max. Well, you look at a mountain or you just look at, sometimes there is a cone shape going on there. I guess what I was thinking is, too, what if it wasn't just strictly to do with your home? Like, what if the landscaping around your home, I'm just picturing hurricane winds blowing across or some of these winds that they're getting in California.
Right.
Well, what if there was some features in the design of your landscape and the roof of your home and the entire property where maybe it forms kind of a cone? Like, in other words, the wind blows across, and maybe because of the angle of your fence, or maybe because a little hump that goes around, it pushes the air above your house rather than blasting into the side of your house or something. I don't know.
I'm not sure if there's a validity to it, but it makes me think of like those A-shaped cabins.
That exist out there. A-frame cabins. So I don't know. I think there needs to be something new. You made a good point, though. You can't. One size does not fit all. You can't have the English style home here in a hurricane zone. We've talked about alternatives many times. We've had domes. Mm-hmm. I remember dome homes were a big thing back in the 70s. We've had a variety, and everything has a particular plus or minus as to why we do it. Right. Yeah.
And again, now you and I have talked about this many times. The changes in technology that we have available to us make almost anything possible.
I keep thinking of this graphene or carbon fiber construction and things like. You have a stronger construction that's lighter and can span greater widths. It changes the whole game. So.
Although my question is remember at the beginning of the show, I talked about where was the world before caulk? Well, it's like, pre-caulk structures are technically still around today. So what are we doing wrong to where our structures don't have as high a shelf life as ancient structures? Do we need to go back to simplicity?
That's a good point. We were talking about that castle a couple weeks ago in Spain. That's 600 years later. Or 500 years later, their plumbing's working perfectly. Yeah. Well, no, I'm sorry, 800 years later.
I'm curious to see how concrete 3D printed homes hold up.
Right.
As you think about the exterior of your home, this is a very durable material.
Yeah.
It's not flammable. It's not gonna, and given a few tweaks, you could easily round off corners or make things less wind resistant. So I think that's a very big rabbit hole we're going to fall down sometime in the future.
Well, I am going to be keeping my eye on how they rebuild in North Carolina and in Los Angeles, because I mean the one thing that happens in these disasters is there's always innovation. At least you hope so, because you don't want to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over.
Right.
So you hope that there's some new designs that come out of this that make it a little safer. So, but anyway, it's funny that sandcastles can provoke this kind of thought. But hey, before we get out of here, I had a recommended viewing.
Oh, okay.
And you're gonna. I don't think you'll roll your eyes at me at this, but okay. So my wife and I have become hooked on this show called the what is it called? It is called the It's the Great Food Truck Race.
Oh,
basically, it's a contest of food truck. Either they own a food truck or they want to own a food truck,
right?
And you get about 8 or 10 teams, and they compete, and they go from city to city, and they run their food truck. And you might think, well, what does that have to do with home improvement? I think this show has a lot of great lessons if you want to become a contractor, because they throw all these challenges at them that happen out in the real world.
Oh, yes.
Running a food truck. And I was amazed at how much this overlaps with my contracting work. When I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is work. It's a night you can watch it with your kids. It's an innocent, fun show. But have you ever seen that show?
I have seen it, and actually having built a food truck or two in my time.
Yeah.
I find that to be a pretty big rabbit hole to fall down. It's a lot of fun. The biggest thing is you learn the ergonomics of motion, because how does the food truck move? How do you move in the food truck? What's the most efficient way to get something done? There are a lot of lessons there for your home.
And it teaches you marketing skills. It teaches you, and working with adversity, because every contractor is going to deal with that. You're going to show up at the big box store, and they're not going to have the materials you need that day, and you have to change your scheduling. And there's a whatever. I would if anybody out there is a fan of this show, I'd love to hear from you as well. But it's just one of those things. Sometimes these subjects, it's funny the overlap that you get with them. So, but and the host is a pretty cool dude. It's not. I mean, there is a little bit of that manufactured drama, but it's not terrible. But it's
there's enough drama in a food truck. Trust me.
Yeah, it's entertaining, and it's amazing too what kind of quality cuisine you can get from a food truck. So, yeah. I mean, we've seen that here in the Mid-South. We have some great food trucks as well. So, all right, well, that's your homework assignment. Go check out the Great Food Truck Race. But, guys, we're out of time. I hear the music going. So another dynamic and diverse and partially weird episode of Tool Talk Radio is in the can. So until next, let's just cash out. Until next week, I'm Joe Thorson. On behalf of my buddy Allan Gilbreth and our pal Max over there behind the glass, thanks for listening to Tool Talk Radio, and we'll see you next week.